Darkness covers Egypt. The Nile smells like blood. Frogs crawl across palace floors. Dead animals rot in the fields. Parents hold their children close while the sky turns black in the middle of the day. One plague after another crashes into the greatest empire on earth. Most people read the plagues in Exodus as random acts of anger from God. But that is not what this story is really about. Exodus is not just a story about punishment. It is a story about dethronement. Every plague was aimed at something Egypt trusted and worshipped. Every judgment pulled down a false god. And at the center of it all stood Pharaoh, a king who believed he was more than a man. The plagues were not chaos. They were the slow collapse of an empire's whole belief system. And once you see the pattern, you cannot unsee it. Let me show you what I mean. At this time, Egypt was the most powerful nation on earth. Golden temples stood beside the Nile. Priests sang prayers before statues of strange gods. Huge monuments declared Pharaoh eternal. Year after year, the Nile flooded at the perfect time, bringing food, wealth, and life to the land. Then one morning, everything changed. As the sun rose, Pharaoh walked down to the Nile, the river Egyptians believed carried divine life itself. And that is where Moses met him. Not in secret, not far away in the desert, but at the very heart of Egypt's pride and power. Because Exodus is not just about setting slaves free. It is a battle between the God of Israel and the gods of Egypt. And what happens next changes everything. At first, the story seems simple. Pharaoh refuses to let the people of Israel go, so God sends plagues against Egypt. The more Pharaoh says no, the worse the suffering becomes. Rivers turn to blood. Frogs fill the land. Crops die. Darkness covers the sky. Egypt suffers because Pharaoh refuses to listen. That is how most people understand the story. And it is true. But Exodus says something deeper is happening. Again and again, the Bible calls these plagues signs and wonders. That means they were not just punishments. They were messages. They were showing Egypt, Israel, and the whole world something important about who God is. Each plague was aimed at something Egypt trusted. The Nile was not just water to Egypt. It was life itself. The river fed their farms, filled their storage houses, and made the nation rich. But when the Nile turned to blood, the thing they trusted most became useless. The same thing happens again and again. The sun goes dark. Animals die. The land breaks apart. Even the air feels dangerous. Egypt believed its gods controlled all these things. They believed their gods protected nature, power, health, and life itself. But one by one, every part of Egypt failed. And then there was Pharaoh. To Egypt, Pharaoh was not just a king. He was treated like a living god. His words carried power. His throne looked untouchable. No one was supposed to challenge him. But with every plague, Pharaoh's power looked smaller and smaller. He could not stop the river from turning red. He could not stop the frogs. He could not stop the darkness. He could not protect his own land. The plagues were tearing down Egypt's belief system piece by piece. This was more than a battle between Moses and Pharaoh. It was a battle over who truly ruled the world. And everyone watching could see the answer. Egypt's God stayed silent. But the God of Israel moved with power. The first plague begins at the center of Egypt's power, the Nile River. To us, a river is just water flowing through land. But to Egypt, the Nile was everything. It watered their farms, fed their people, carried trade boats, and made the nation rich. Without the Nile, Egypt could not survive. Every year, the river flooded at just the right time. When the waters pulled back, rich soil covered the land. Crops grew. Food filled the cities. Life continued because the Nile continued. And Egypt did not just depend on the river. They worshipped it. Many Egyptians believed the Nile was a gift from their gods. Some even believed divine power flowed through its waters. The river was treated with honor because it looked like the source of life itself. That is why the first plague mattered so much. When Moses lifted his staff and the Nile turned to blood, God was striking the heart of Egypt's confidence. The river that gave life suddenly brought death. Fish floated to the surface. The water smelled rotten. People could not drink from it. The thing that once fed the nation now filled it with fear. Think about what the people of Egypt must have felt. The river they trusted every day had become untouchable. And this was only the beginning. The plague was sending a message. Egypt believed its gods controlled nature and protected the land. But in a single moment, the God of Israel showed that he had power over the very thing Egypt believed was sacred. Life became death. Safety became fear. Blessing became judgment. It was as if creation itself was starting to fall apart. And there may be another deeper meaning hidden here. Years earlier, Pharaoh had ordered Hebrew baby boys to be thrown into the Nile. The river had carried death before. Now Egypt was forced to see that death with its own eyes. The water turned red like blood, and suddenly the empire that looked so strong did not seem strong anymore. Because when the Nile failed, Egypt began to understand something terrifying. The gods they trusted could not save them. One line appears again and again throughout the Exodus story. Pharaoh hardened his heart. For many people, this sounds confusing. Some imagine Pharaoh becoming cold and emotionless, like he suddenly lost the ability to care. But the story is showing something deeper than that. In the Hebrew language, Exodus uses different words to describe Pharaoh's heart. One word means strengthened, another means heavy, another means stubborn or hard. These words paint a picture of someone who keeps refusing to bend, even after seeing the truth with his own eyes. Pharaoh watches the Nile turn to blood. He sees frogs cover the land. He watches darkness swallow the sky. Again and again, he sees power that his magicians cannot copy and his gods cannot stop. And still, he refuses to bow. That is what makes the story so shocking. Pharaoh is not lacking evidence. He is surrounded by it. His servants are afraid. His nation is suffering. Even his own officials begin telling him to let Israel go. But Pharaoh keeps holding tighter to his throne. And this becomes even more powerful when you understand what the heart meant in ancient Egypt. To Egyptians, the heart was not just about feelings. It represented wisdom, character, truth, and identity. They believed the heart revealed who a person really was. After death, Egyptians believed a person's heart would even be weighed to judge their life. So when Exodus keeps speaking about Pharaoh's heart, it is striking at the center of who he is. The king who claims to be divine is becoming spiritually trapped inside his own pride. The stronger the signs become, the harder Pharaoh becomes. His empire is falling apart around him, but he still cannot let go of power. That is the tragedy of the story. Pharaoh could see the truth, but he did not want to surrender to it. And in many ways, that is what hardening really is. It is not just refusing to hear God once. It is hearing the truth again and again until pride becomes stronger than wisdom. Pharaoh stood in front of undeniable power, yet his heart stayed unmoved. The false god king remained stubborn while his kingdom slowly collapsed around him. The plagues may look random at first, but they follow a careful pattern. There is an order hidden inside the chaos. Again and again, Moses approaches Pharaoh in the morning by the Nile and gives a warning. Then another warning comes later inside Pharaoh's palace. But after that, the next plague arrives suddenly with no warning at all. The pattern repeats 3 times. Warning at the river, warning in the palace, then judgment falls without notice. It is almost like the story moves in waves, each one stronger than the last. At first, the plagues seem like irritation. The water turns to blood. Frogs cover the land. Gnats fill the air. The people are uncomfortable, but Egypt is still standing. Then things become more serious. Flies swarm the nation. Animals die in huge numbers. Crops are destroyed. Now Egypt's wealth begins to disappear. Farms fail. Trade suffers. Food becomes uncertain. The empire starts losing the things that made it strong. Then the suffering turns personal. Painful boils break out on human skin. Even the magicians who once stood before Pharaoh cannot stand anymore. The people who claimed spiritual power are left weak and helpless. And after that, the world itself seems to break apart. Thunder crashes from the sky. Fire falls with hail. Locusts cover the land. Darkness swallows Egypt for 3 days. The deeper the story goes, the more creation itself seems to come undone. Light disappears. The sky becomes dangerous. The land stops producing life. Everything Egypt depended on begins falling apart. This matters because Egypt believed it represented perfect order. The nation was proud of its power, wisdom, and control. Pharaoh was supposed to keep balance in the world. Egypt saw itself as strong, stable, and untouchable. But under judgment, that order slowly disintegrates. The river fails. The land fails. The heavens fail. Even time itself feels broken as darkness covers the nation in the middle of the day. It is as if creation is moving backward into chaos. And that is the terrifying message behind the plagues. The empire that looked eternal was not truly in control. Only God was. By now, the pattern is impossible to ignore. This is not just a fight between Moses and Pharaoh. It is not only about setting slaves free. Something much bigger is happening in Egypt. Then Exodus finally says it clearly. God declares, "Against all the gods of Egypt I will execute judgment." That changes everything. The plagues were not random disasters. They were direct attacks against the spiritual powers Egypt trusted. Take the plague of darkness. For 3 full days, Egypt is covered in deep darkness. People cannot move. Fear fills the land. This was a direct challenge to Ra, the sun god, one of the most important gods in all of Egypt. Egypt believed Ra ruled the skies and brought light to the world. But when darkness covered the nation, Ra could do nothing. Then there were the frogs. Frogs were linked to Hecate, a goddess connected to life and birth. But instead of bringing blessing, frogs flooded homes, beds, ovens, and streets. What once seemed sacred became disgusting and unbearable. The death of livestock struck at Hathor, a goddess often connected with cattle and strength. Egypt's animals were signs of wealth, power, and survival. When they died, Egypt's economy and religion were both shaken at the same time. Even the boils carried a deeper message. The priests and magicians of Egypt were supposed to stand before the gods with purity and power. But the boils covered their skin so badly that they could not even stand before Pharaoh anymore. The spiritual leaders of Egypt were left helpless. One by one, the gods of Egypt were exposed as powerless. But then the final plague came. And this time, it struck Pharaoh's own house. The firstborn son dies. Mourning fills the palace. Cries rise through the streets of Egypt. This was the true collapse of Egypt's spiritual system. Because Pharaoh was not just seen as a ruler. He was worshipped like a god. His family line was treated as divine. The future king was supposed to carry that sacred power forward. But now even Pharaoh's house is broken. The king who claimed divine power could not protect his own son. And in that moment, Egypt's false gods fell silent. If you are discovering connections you have never seen before, share this with someone who loves digging into the Bible. At this point in the story, it is easy to see only judgment. Egypt is breaking apart. Fear spreads across the land. Every new plague feels heavier than the one before it. But hidden inside the destruction is something many people miss. Mercy. Again and again, God warns Pharaoh before judgment falls. Before the hail comes, a warning is given. Before the locusts arrive, a warning is given. Before the darkness spreads, Pharaoh is told what will happen. God does not strike blindly. He speaks first. That matters. Pharaoh is given chance after chance to listen, humble himself, and let the people go. Even after repeated rebellion, the door is still open for him to respond. And slowly, some Egyptians begin to believe. Before the hail falls from the sky, Moses warns the people to bring their servants and animals inside. Some Egyptians ignore the warning, but others listen and protect what they have. For the first time, people in Egypt begin responding to the word of the God of Israel. That is a major turning point. Fear is turning into recognition. Some Egyptians start seeing that their gods cannot protect them. They begin understanding that the God speaking through Moses is different from every god they have known before. And when Israel finally leaves Egypt, the Bible says a mixed group goes with them. Not only Israelites leave, some Egyptians leave too. Even in the middle of judgment, mercy is making a path for anyone willing to listen. That changes the way we see the plagues. The story is not about uncontrolled anger. The plagues rise slowly, one after another, because God is revealing something. He is exposing false gods. He is warning proud hearts. He is giving people the chance to see the truth before final judgment arrives. The suffering is real. The judgment is serious. But mercy is still present in the middle of it all. And maybe that is one of the deepest truths in Exodus. God was not only tearing Egypt down, he was also calling people to wake up before it was too late. By the end of the plagues, Egypt is almost unrecognizable. The mighty empire that once looked untouchable is filled with fear, darkness, and grief. The nation that believed it controlled the world can no longer protect itself. And the reason runs deeper than politics or disaster. Egypt became what it worshipped. Egypt trusted power, but power could not stop the plagues. Egypt trusted wealth, but their crops failed, their animals died, and their economy collapsed. Egypt trusted military strength, but soldiers and chariots could not hold back judgment. Egypt trusted priests, magicians, and false gods. But none of them could heal the land or remove the darkness. And above all, Egypt trusted Pharaoh. He was treated like more than a man. People looked to him for safety, order, and life. But plague after plague revealed the truth. Pharaoh was powerless too. The Nile failed. The priests failed. The gods failed. Pharaoh failed. Everything Egypt built its identity on slowly fell apart. That is what makes the Exodus story feel so modern. Because people still do the same thing today. We may not bow before statues beside the Nile, but people still build their lives around things that cannot save them. Some trust money. Some trust fame. Some trust politics, success, beauty, or control. People still believe that if they gain enough power, they will finally feel safe. But the story of Exodus asks a hard question. What happens when the thing you trust most begins to fail? What happens when wealth cannot fix the problem? When power cannot stop the fear? When success cannot heal the emptiness inside? That is why Exodus still matters. It is not just an ancient story about Egypt. It is a mirror held up to every human heart. Because every person worships something, and whatever sits at the center of your life will shape you. Egypt built its whole world around false gods and human pride. In the end, those things collapsed under their own weight. The Exodus story warns us that anything placed above God will eventually fail us too. And that truth feels just as real today as it did beside the Nile thousands of years ago. So what do you do with a story like this? First, examine what controls your trust before crisis exposes it. Egypt believed its power would always protect it. They trusted wealth, rulers, armies, and gods made by human hands. But when pressure came, the truth was revealed. The things they trusted could not save them. And the same question reaches us today. What do we trust most when fear enters our lives? What do we run to when everything starts shaking? Because anything placed above God will eventually fail under the weight of real suffering. Second, recognize that God sometimes tears down false security to create real freedom. Israel had lived under Egypt for generations. Slavery had become normal. Fear had become part of daily life. But before freedom could begin, Egypt's grip had to be broken. That is what the plagues were doing. God was not only judging Egypt. He was breaking chains. Sometimes the things we lose are the very things keeping us trapped. Sometimes what feels like collapse is the beginning of rescue. And third, remember that Exodus is ultimately a story of deliverance. At the center of the story is not destruction, but salvation. While judgment moved through Egypt, the Israelites marked their doors with the blood of a lamb. Behind those doors, families waited through the night, trusting that God would protect them. And he did. That image would echo through the rest of the Bible for generations. Then the morning came. Egypt stood silent except for the sound of mourning. But far beyond the city lights, thousands of Israelites walked into the wilderness beneath the stars. They carried unleavened bread in their hands and the memory of lamb's blood on wooden doorposts. Behind them, an empire had fallen. Ahead of them, the sea waited to open. And the God who shattered Egypt's false gods still confronts every false throne today. Do not worship what cannot save you. If this message opened your eyes or touched your heart in any way, share it with someone who may need to hear it too. And if you want to continue exploring the deeper truths and hidden threads of Scripture with us, be sure to subscribe and leave a comment. Even a single word can help these messages reach more people. Thank you for being part of this journey. Keep seeking truth. Keep drawing closer to God, and never forget, the story God is writing is far from over. God bless you.